Hi, welcome in to your Wednesday. Yes, it is Wednesday edition of Bet. I had to think about it for a second. We are going to get you ready for the NHL playoffs, and we've got 4 teams remaining. Greg Wyshynski, a.k.a. the Puck Daddy, joined us on the show, and Bernardo Osuna will join us as well, getting you ready for the big fight on Saturday. But let's start with the Puck Daddy. How you doing? Man, one of the busiest men at ESPN, that's for sure. Let's start first and foremost in the East. I'll call them my Florida Panthers. I'm from Miami. Why not, right? They were the last to make it into the playoffs, and now they're still one of the remaining standing 4. Really unbelievable. Small dog in this series compared to, of course, where the Bruins as well as the Maple Leafs were, getting plus 115, almost a pick 'em. So with that being said, who do you like in this series between the Panthers and the Canes, Greg?
Gotta tell you, I don't want to disappoint the Miami locals. You still got the heat, but I think the Hurricanes are winning the series against the Panthers. The Canes, I've seen them play against the Devils and the Islanders. They are the best defensive team in these playoffs. Really good on home ice, 28-10-3 during the regular season, 8-3 in the playoffs. They're almost unbeatable at home, especially in the playoffs. It's going to be a tough series, a well-played series. They both kind of like to do the same sort of things, but in the end, I do like the Hurricanes to advance to the Stanley Cup final.
All right, so let's go one step. By the way, I love the new do. Looking really good, Greg. Let's go one step further. Let's talk about the exact series finishes and how you would play them. Right? So you've got like the Hurricanes, you believe that they're going to win. Are they going to go the distance? Is it going to be 7? Is it going to be 6? Is it going to be 5? Look at those odds. How are you playing it, Greg?
Well, the chalk is 7, and I think 7's the number. I mean, this is going to be a really tight series. Like I said, both teams like to play the same way. Dump the puck out fast, win puck battles. It's not about puck possession for these teams. It's about winning those battles for the puck. 2 goalies that are hot. I mean, Bobrovsky for the Panthers, the Leafs got goalied last round with the way that he played in games 1 and 2, and Freddie Anderson's been great for the Hurricanes as well. So I see this being a marathon. I do think the Hurricanes' home ice advantage in the end could be the big differentiation between the two, but I could see this thing going 7.
All right, so let's turn our attention to the West, where we know the Golden Knights, they now advance. Where they were the dog in the last series against Edmonton. A lot of people thought Edmonton was going to win that series. Obviously, they did not. They won that series 4-2. And your Dallas Stars, I still remember we had you on Bet. You like Dallas coming into the playoffs. They're plus 115 right now. Let's take a look at how this exact series could finish. Curious if you're still feeling Dallas like you did at the start, the onset of the playoffs. But the Golden Knights to win in 7, you can see those numbers there, as well as in 6, Dallas Stars to win in 6 at plus 450. I don't know. I'm kind of feeling that might be where you roll. So how are you playing this series, Greg?
It's going to be Big D over Sin City, I can tell you that, and I think it's going to happen in 6 games. Look, the Golden Knights have had an amazing playoff run, and they're very tough to beat at home, but the Dallas Stars present a much more difficult problem for them at 5-on-5 at even strength. Winnipeg, pushover. Edmonton can't figure themselves out at 5-on-5. Dallas is a great 5-on-5 team. I think that's an advantage for the Stars. The other huge advantage, obviously, no secret here, it's in goal. The Vegas Golden Knights are rolling with Aiden Hill. All their goalies are hurt right now. Jake Ottinger for the Dallas Stars, only goalie left in the playoffs, started at least 55 games in the regular season. He had a subpar series against the Seattle Kraken by his own admission. I think he bounces back big time in the series. And finally, Anita, the Pete DeBoer factor. The guy got fired by Vegas last summer. He goes to Dallas, coaches the Stars. As we've talked about before, Pete DeBoer, first year in San Jose, first year in Jersey, Stanley Cup final. First year in Dallas, same story.
All right, let's dive even further into the guys on the ice and those who have been really the stars, not the Dallas Stars, but the stars of the postseason, and who we think is going to win the Stanley Cup MVP, right, of the finals. And let's take a look, because you've got Sebastian at the top of the list at 6-1. Those are the best odds right now. You've got Eichel at 6-1. Your favorite dude out of Florida, Kachuk, is sitting there at 7-1. So who do you feel is going to take home this hardware?
All right, so going with my theory that it's Dallas and Carolina, I'm going to give you two names. One is Rupe Hintz of the Dallas Stars. We ran our Conn Smythe Watch on ESPN.com today, in which I reach out to writers that might end up being voters for this award to kind of check their temperature. And Hintz was the first overall guy out of all four teams in our Conn Smythe Watch. So he's leading Dallas in points and goals. He's been an outstanding player for them, has 9 goals in the postseason, and has scored big goals too. Scored in Game 7 against the Kraken to get the scoring going there. So he's one to definitely watch if you think the Stars make the final. Carolina, I'm going to go with Brent Burns. He's a long shot right now in the Conn Smythe odds, but he's a defenseman. Defensemen have won this award in 2 of the last 3 seasons. He's only 2 points off the lead for Sebastian Aho for the team scoring lead, and he's logging the most minutes. A really well-liked player, too. Don't forget that factor. Who do we want to see win the MVP? It could be Brent Burns at the end of the day.
All right, last but not least, let's talk big picture in regard to how we see the Stanley Cup ending up series-wise, okay? And there's some really good odds here, so I'm really curious how you feel that this is going to play out, right? At the top, obviously, the odds makers believe that the Canes and the Golden Knights are going to be the 2 teams that will face off in the Stanley Cup. Canes over the Golden Knights plus 450, Golden Knights over the Canes plus 475. How are you rolling here, Greg?
Well, I'm not a guy that loves to cover all his bases, but I'm telling you, Carolina over Dallas, Dallas over Carolina, you're going to make some money either way. I think that's going to be your Stanley Cup final. I lean a bit towards Carolina in the final. I got to tell you, I mean, like I said, their defense alone is the reason to back them, and they just keep on scoring offensively despite missing some guys to injury. But either of those scenarios I see playing out, so sprinkle a little bit on both.
Fantastic. Great stuff as always. It's going to be fun to see who advances. And needless to say, I'm anticipating a really great Stanley Cup Finals, Greg. Thank you so much. I'm sure we'll see you again on Bet very soon.
Anytime.
We go from the ice to the ring, and Bernardo joins us now. Great to have you on. Huge fight in Vegas this weekend, right? We've got Haney going against Lomachenko. Now, you've got Haney who's favored by minus 280. Before we dive into the fight, and I want to get your picks and whatnot, for those that are watching, maybe not so familiar between the history here, some bent-up anger over the fact that Haney was not able to fight Loma back in 2019. So if you can, share with us that backstory, which I think will be really interesting for those who are going to tune in this weekend.
Anita, it's a pleasure to be here with you on the Bet, and it all comes down to good old boxing politics. Vasiliy Lomachenko wins the WBC world title against Jorge Linares, and then he unifies it against Jose Pedraza, who was the WBO champion. He goes after his 3rd belt, which was against Luke Campbell in London, and he wins the WBA strap. There's only 1 belt missing, but boxing being boxing, where you can have 2 champions at the same time, the WBC allows Devin Haney to fight Zaur Abdullayev, the last man that he stopped in 2019, and then says, okay, Haney's next to fight Vasiliy Lomachenko. But Lomachenko, the 2-time Olympic gold medalist, says, my dream is to be the undisputed champion. So why don't we designate me the WBC franchise champion, a designation that has only been allowed for Canelo Alvarez previously, and that happens. So then Devin Haney becomes the official WBC champion. He was called the email champion at the time because that's how he was notified of him being elevated to the champion. But then we get Teofimo Lopez, a fight for all 4 belts, kind of, who beats Vasiliy Lomachenko, then goes and loses to George Kambosos in Australia, and then now Devin Haney goes and wins those belts in 2022 in Australia. He wins the rematch, and here we are 3 years later, and now, instead of Loma being the favorite, Devin Haney is the favorite as the true undisputed champion, the youngest ever in the 4-belt era, making that happen at age 23. Only in boxing did that even make sense, Anita, but that's the sport I work in.
Well, make sense of this. I mean, this is a heavy favorite, right? Minus 280. So explain, why such a big favorite for Haney?
I mean, in boxing, the old adage says, a good big man beats a good small man. And what we have here is an exceptionally skilled big man who's fast, who's skilled, and who is quick and uses his range because he's quite long. Yet we have a once-in-a-generation small man who knows how to fight big fighters. Why? Because his entire career, he's been put in against big fighters. The thing here is, why is Lomachenko such an underdog? Because his last 4 fights have been a mixed bag. Starting from the Teofimo Lopez fight where he gave away the first 6 rounds, he comes back against Nakatani and knocks him out in 9 rounds. Then he goes up against Richard Comey. He has him out on his feet in the 7th round, looks over at the corner, kind of says, are you guys going to stop this punishment? They don't, so it goes the distance. And then he comes in, and in his last fight against Jermaine Ortiz, it was a lackluster win against what? A big, long, skilled, and fast fighter. So a lot of people are saying Jermaine Ortiz is not on the level of Devin Haney, yet he gave Lomachenko all he can handle. How can a 35-year-old who has had shoulder surgery after the Teofimo Lopez fight pull off this upset? And that's one of the reasons that Devin Haney is such a big favorite.
So Loma notorious, right, as a slow starter, but the books are telling us that more than likely this fight is going to go the distance. So my question to you is, does that mean Loma's going to have to change his fighting style that we've seen in the past so he doesn't fall behind in points in this matchup?
He has to, because he cannot afford to do what he did against Teofimo Lopez and give away the first 6 rounds. He made it competitive down late, but it was that 12th round rally from Teofimo Lopez that was the difference between being an undisputed champion and not. And so the last fight we saw Vasiliy Lomachenko in was against Jermaine Ortiz. Also a very slow start. What helped him was the fact that he swept the last 6 rounds. But guess what? You're not fighting Jermaine Ortiz. You're fighting a man who is undisputed, who's 24 years old, who is fresh, who is a man who doesn't give up his size. We see a lot of big fighters in the sport that don't know how to use their size. Devin Haney is so disciplined in that sense that he fights tall, he fights long. And so Vasiliy Lomachenko, who is used to being the smaller fighter, he has to come out and really do something different, because what he's done in his last 2 fights will simply not suffice against a fighter of the caliber and the discipline of Devin Haney.
So we know Haney has never lost a fight, but in his last 6 fights, no TKO, no knockout. Now, all unanimous decision. He does have that reach advantage. How is that going to come into play? How do you think that's going to affect the fight on Saturday?
On paper, it's a huge advantage because he has a 3.5-inch height and a 5.5-inch reach advantage over Vasiliy Lomachenko. But after Loma's last win against Jermaine Ortiz, I was doing the post-fight interview, and in comes Devin Haney, and they're facing off in front of me, and Lomachenko muses, "What are you, a heavyweight?" I mean, the size difference is notorious, and you'll see it every time they face off this week. You know, whether it be at today's press conference, whether it be at the weigh-in on Friday, whether it be right before the fight, it's going to be noticeable. But yet, Vasiliy Lomachenko has done that his entire career. Why? Because this will be his 9th consecutive opponent that has both a height and reach advantage, and his 9th consecutive opponent that has either a height or reach advantage. So a 14th. But when you look at this, Vasiliy Lomachenko is going to need to get on the inside. And this is where referee Harvey Dock is going to be key, because we know that Devin Haney likes to pop the jab and clinch. And some of the best work that Vasiliy Lomachenko does is on the inside. What will referee Harvey Dock allow to happen? Will he allow Devin Haney to initiate those clinches after he jabs, or will he allow them to fight out of it? And how the fight is officiated will mean what type of fight we get. And so that's going to be really interesting to see as the fight progresses, because Devin Haney's already put it out there. Lomachenko's a dirty fighter, and he's the first fighter that's ever said that. None of his past opponents have said that, so there's some gamesmanship going on there.
Okay, before we let you go, take me, take our viewers, take our listeners to the window, hold our hands. How are you playing this fight?
My first inclination was the over. 10.5 rounds, it has to go over, right? Devin Haney hasn't scored a knockout since his lightweight world title fight against Zaur Abdullayev. 6 consecutive decisions. But then I saw minus 600. I said, no, that's a sucker's bet. So then I said, Devin Haney has to win, right? Minus 165. Okay. But what if you believe that Vasiliy Lomachenko can have one last hurrah at age 35 with all that skill, with that southpaw stance at plus 330? No, let's not do that. Let's go straight to plus 800 for the knockout. If you believe that Vasiliy Lomachenko has the goods to beat Devin Haney, then you go for the stoppage win and get yourself 8-1 odds.
Great stuff, Bernardo. Thank you so much for getting us ready for a great fight, no doubt, on Saturday. Appreciate you.
Don't forget to buy that ESPN Plus pay-per-view, because this is a fight between a legend and an up-and-coming future legend, because Devin Haney is a throwback fighter at age 24, undisputed, and he wants all the smoke, whether it be Shakur Stevenson next, whether it be Gervonta Tank Davis next. Everybody's running away from the challenges, and Devin Haney's running right at it.
Fantastic. All right, we take you from the boxing ring to the dirt. And we always like to end the show with before we let you go. A lot going on this weekend, right? We got the PGA Championship, boxing, NHL hockey, and the Preakness. It's the second leg of the Triple Crown, the 148th running. Although this week, they're calling it the weakness. Why? Only one horse that raced in the Derby is racing in the Preakness, and that's Mage, the horse who did win. Why? People are asking. Because you've got 15 days between the Derby and the Preakness, and many trainers and owners feel that it's too short of a time, aka load management that we see a lot in professional sports. Okay, so how am I playing this? Mage, definitely gonna play. That's the favorite coming in. Won the Derby, good mind, push button speed, and I feel is gonna get a fast time, fast pace, and more than likely has a good chance of winning this. There are 3 other horses that I'm keeping an eye on. The 8 horse. This is First Mission. This is a Brad Cox horse, main threat for Mage. Could get a great trip outside, only 8 horses, so it doesn't, the 1 and the 8 post, not a huge concern. And also this horse is fresh. Why? Because it did not run in the Derby. Horse number 7, Blazing Sevens, Chad Brown horse. Again, did not run in the Derby, coming in fresh for the Preakness. And the 1 horse, National Treasure, a Bob Baffert horse. Bob Baffert has won the Preakness 7 times, looking for 8. This horse is going to run with blinkers on, so it could keep the horse more focused. So these are the 4 horses that I really like out of the 8. I'm going to round these out with 2 long shots. The 5 horse, Red Route 1, impressive closing speed, and the 6 horse, which is Perform, actually has the same sire, the same daddy as Mage. So stepbrothers running against each other in the Preakness. So how am I going to play this? So with these 6 horses that I like out of the 8, this is exactly how I'm going to play it. I'm going to play a $1 trifecta that ultimately at the end of the day is going to cost you $14. I do believe that the 3 and the 8 are going to finish first. So I've got the 3 and the 8 that I believe are going to finish first, like I said. I've got the 3, 8, and 7 placing. What does that mean in horse racing? It means that they're going to finish second. So I've got one of those 3 horses that I believe are going to come in second. And last but not least, I've got the 7, the 1, the 5, and the 6 that I believe are going to show. And in horse racing, that means that they are going to finish third. So I'm going to be playing a $1 trifecta that ultimately at the end of the day is just going to cost you $14 out of your pocket. And these are how I believe that these 6 horses very well could finish. I also, again, if there's one horse in this race that I believe could pull the upset, because I believe Mage is going to go off as the favorite, it's the 8 horse. It's that First Mission horse. So I'm also going to throw a little bit of money, maybe $20 on Mage to win. So again, the 148th running of the Preakness. Make sure you enjoy that. We'll be back next Monday with you as well. Thank you so much for tuning in to Bet, and we'll see you next week.